you so much. Excellent. So it's 3 p.m. here in Bonn, and it is my happy duty to conduct the proceedings here where we start this webinar. My name is Saman Kakkar. I work for the UN System Staff College, and I'm leading the facilitation team of this course on the circular economy and the 2030 agenda. We are going to have a lot of fun together for the next 6 weeks, but we're also going to be getting very serious about our work. So it's good that we all get acquainted with how we are interacting with each other, and then hopefully that makes for a smooth ride as we go along. So let's kick off with the agenda for the day. I'll tell you a bit about why we started this course, what our journey has been in putting this course together. We'll talk a little bit about those introductory materials, although it's quite evident from what we've seen that most people have gone through them and most people are on the platform engaging quite actively, especially since Monday, since the core content was released. So I think most people are doing well there. I'd like to introduce you to your facilitation team, which is the team of facilitators that's helping you with any kind of technical issues or answering any substantive questions that you may have along the way. Then we hear a presentation each from my colleague Sandhya Balasubramaniam here at UNSSC and from Luke Reuter at the UNEP. I'll tell you a little bit more about Sandhya and Luke as we go along, two very key individuals to this course. We'll have an opportunity for a Q&A towards the end if you have any questions that relate either to how we run the course or about the content of today's presentations. And then in the end, what we'd like to do is we'd like to break up people into rooms, breakout rooms, so you can actually talk to each other and engage a little bit with your fellow participants. So with that, with a lot to get through, let me get started. So officially, a very, very warm welcome to all of you in this course. Which is now in its fifth edition. So we have had 3 editions of this course starting from the year 2020. And we're very happy to put together a rather special edition earlier this year, which was done for the Waste Management Authority in Melbourne, in Australia, where we had a group of around 300 people who all work together in the ecosystem for circularity and waste management in Melbourne, who could come together and then not just engage online in this course, but also talk to each other within the sphere of their work in the city. As I said, this course, it took a lot of hands to put together this course. We conceptualized this course, my colleague Sandhya, who's here, she's leading the team that conceptualized this course way back in 2020. And I suppose 2019 and 2020 was when we ran the first edition of this course. We've since had 3 regular editions, this being the 4th one, plus the one I just mentioned in Australia. And in putting together this course, we had invaluable inputs from a lot of partners. So, and of course, the UN Environment Program, UNEP, was a key partner in those inputs in getting them. But we also managed to engage with the Ellen MacArthur Foundation, with OECD, and with UN Habitat, who were also very generous with their time and with their perspective. So we could not just design this course, but since we've been evolving it with every edition based on feedback, it's been very, very good to have these people to draw upon. And I think the thing I want to highlight is that this course gets more and more competitive each year. We see more and more applications. This cohort has around 400 people in it, and I'll tell you a little bit more about that after we take you through the program of how the platform works. And I think with this cohort, this would be, I think, around 1,600 people who have already participated in this course. And for everyone who's here, I just want to say a big congratulations, because this was extremely competitive. It was very, very hard for us to leave out certain people. But I'm very happy that we could bring together all the people who are here and who have joined us. So I think you should all be very proud of yourself, and we're really looking forward to the next 6 weeks with you. Having said that, I would like to now talk a little bit about how we are engaging here. I think we're doing well. Everyone has named themselves and everyone is muted. I just want to point out that we'd like that everyone remains muted while the speakers are delivering their presentations. And during the chat and the Q&A time, if you wish to unmute yourself, just raise your hand. And our Zoom moderator here, Branka, who's working behind the scenes, she will unmute you. So it'll be good if we could just follow that. If you do have a question during the presentation, feel free to put it in the chat. And the chat is again, as you can see on your screen at the bottom right there, although we are all Zoom experts having lived through the pandemic for the last few years, but I just thought I'd point that out, that make sure you mark your question to everyone, just so that we all see what it is and we can put it to either the speaker or we could answer it for you. Okay, so with that, I think we've already talked about this renaming business, if you haven't done it already, and raising your hand if you want to be unmuted, which will come later during the Q&A. All right, let's talk a bit about the course now. As you know, this course is structured over 6 weeks, and I know a lot of people have already started going through the materials. In fact, we've started seeing responses to the quizzes and the activities as well. The course follows a fairly structured format throughout the 6 weeks. However, in following that structured format, we have a lot of flexibility in how you engage with the material. So as you can see, we have sort of organized the material over 6 weeks thematically. We start with an introduction to the circular economy and the linkages with sustainable development, which is also something our speakers will sort of elaborate on as we go along. And then we go on to talk about where circularity can be sort of implemented in terms of how we unlock value with circularity, and then focus on, in the next 3 weeks, on businesses and as cities as sort of living laboratories for turning our economy into a more circular onto a more circular path. We will dive deep in week 5 into the role the individual plays, because we would have looked at a lot of the institutional mechanisms that drive circularity, and we sort of bring it all together in week 6 when it comes to talking about what are some of the policy options or what are some of the innovations we can look at when it comes to making our world a little more circular. So that in short is a very brief summary of how we've structured these weeks. As I said, each week has a very structured pattern in terms of us releasing the material that you're supposed to study on a Monday. You have all week to go through it. In fact, you do have the following weeks as well. You could keep referring back to it. I would urge you to keep up with the course material, because what that does is that the chats that are happening, the discussions that are happening within the cohort, they stay focused on the topic of the week, and that's how you really benefit from it. We also have some additional reading material, which is not compulsory to read, but we highly recommend it. It's very well curated, I would say, in terms of deepening the concepts that we've tried to introduce you to in the course. And every week has an activity, which this week you may have already seen is a Padlet, in which we ask you to share some information about a circular object that you want to talk about. And there's a quiz. And the quiz, I'll mention this because we get a lot of questions about this. The quiz has a passing grade, but you can attempt it multiple times. If you don't get it right the first time, you surely will the second or the third if you need to. And of course, today is the webinar. So this is the only part of the course where we have a fixed time, which is always 3 p.m. our local time here in Bonn, which is Central European summertime. And yeah, but if you do have something else to do on the day, you could always come back and watch the recording. So you will have access to this quiz and the chat and all the interaction that we have. So that's really how we've organized ourselves. I'm just showing you a few points on the platform, and if you have been on it, I'm sure these were very evident over there. So you already saw that we have 2 forums where we can start discussions, thematic discussions with our classmates, but we can also share resources. And I must say, I was really happy to see already before the course started, because we had shared these fora with you. Over the weekend, there were some excellent articles and some studies. So I really wanted to thank all the people who have been taking the time to not just study, but also to share with others, because we always emphasize this a lot during all our courses, that yes, we do put together a good program to give you a knowledge of the concepts, but what's invaluable is the resources that we have in each other. So we have a fantastic cohort here, and I will talk about it in just a minute, as I promised. And you come from such a diverse range of industries and with so many different perspectives and so much knowledge on the subject that really this is one of the things to take away from it, which is talking to each other and exchanging ideas and resources. So I would really urge you to continue to use this forum as you have already in the last few days or so. This is just a visual reminder of what a course week looks like. I already ran through this. Basically, all the material is organized in a week where it's identical. We only release each week every Monday morning, the Monday morning of that thematic week. So you can actually focus on the previous week, be done with it, and then start afresh when the new week starts. I will skip through that. I think we already know how this works. There is a little announcement section at the top, which we use to sometimes tell you about webinars, or if assignments have been released or assignments have been graded, if there's some feedback to be shared. Most of you should get these notifications in your email as well. So if you're not on the platform at that moment, you should still know that there's something to see there and you can come back. So I think that should do it. Having said that, if anyone is here in the webinar but was struggling to get onto the platform, please do contact your facilitators. I'm going to introduce you to them in a second. I'm just going to take a quick look at the chat just to make sure that we don't have any questions that relate to anything I've said till now. So just give me a second while I do that. Yes, the recordings will be available. Are we able to join other courses in the future? Well, that depends. If you sign up for one of the UNSSC courses and you're selected, then of course you can. And the screen is blinking. Is anybody else experiencing that? That's a good thing to point out. Thanks. If not, then okay. Thank you for confirming that, Sonia. I will come back to questions as soon as I get done with the quick overview of how we've set up. But in the meantime, I'm really happy now to present to you our facilitation team. And of course, as I mentioned, my name is Samant. I am the lead facilitator for this course. But we have a fantastic group of colleagues who has really worked hard to put this course together. And I would like to thank especially Leah, who's my colleague here at the UNSSC in Bonn, who's been doing that, and Nimrat, who's also been helping putting together the materials. And Branka, who I mentioned, is leading the webinar today. She's behind the scenes for that. But last but not least, I'd like to introduce you to your group facilitators. We have Jessica, who's handling group A and B. We have Adya and we have Ashi. We're also looking at group CD and E and F respectively. And I'd just like to take a minute now, if the team is here, starting in the order in which you appear on the screen. So I exclude myself. I've been talking for the last 10 minutes. If you'd like to say a quick hello to the participants, and Leah, starting with you, and then Jessica, and I believe Adya is not here, but Ashi's here. And just say hi to everyone, so they can see who you are.
Thank you so much. Hi everyone, I am Leah. I am associate fellow at UNSSC, and I'm very happy to work with you during this journey.
Leah, I don't know if it's just me, but you had to be louder, or in case you're done, then that's not relevant anymore. Yeah. Jessica, let's hear from you.
Hi everyone. Are you able to hear me?
Yes.
Just checking. Okay. It's really nice to work with all of you guys in this new edition of the CE course. It's really a favorite, and I'm very enthusiastic about this group of people. There's a lot of enthusiasm and huge diversity. So really looking forward. If you need any help, please do reach out. We're here to help you, and it's a pleasure.
I think Adya is not here, but Ashi, if you want to say a quick hello to everyone.
Hi everyone, I'm Ashi. Really happy to meet you guys virtually, and looking forward for the upcoming 6 weeks. If you guys need anything, please feel free to reach out. Yeah, thank you.
Excellent. And I know that we've already had a number of requests about getting onto the platform and accessing webinars and such, but going forward, if we have substantive questions or you want to ask more about some of the material that's on the course, do reach out to your facilitators. One of the strengths of our courses, as we believe, is the facilitated model that we follow, where we want everyone to be able to come out of this with having their questions answered, not just what's on the platform. So thank you so much. And I think we've spoken about ourselves enough. It's time to talk about you. And I've already hinted at this, but this is the most fantastic group that we have here. We have around 400 people. We're still getting people who are hopping on and a few sadly who had to hop off because of other commitments. But give or take a few, we have 400 people from 115 countries across the world. And you're located in 117 countries across the world. So that's even more, that's just amazing, the amount of diversity we have. We are quite evenly split when it comes to different sectors as well. And we have a fair number of colleagues from the UN, but also from multilaterals, other multilaterals. We have people from the private sector. We have people from academia, from think tanks, from NGOs. So it's really a great mix of people, and sort of the geography is also quite evenly distributed. And there is a very good gender balance in this course as well, which is something that is something we aspire to, but it's also something that happened very naturally this time. We were very happy to see it was quite even in terms of us picking people from different parts of the world. So I wasn't kidding when I said that one of the greatest resources you have in this course is each other. And I think this is the slide I present as proof of that. So please do talk to each other. One of the things I did not mention in the earlier slides was that besides having these webinars, we also have a chat function on the platform, which is very useful, which we've organized group-wise. So you could also use that to talk to your fellow participants. Okay, so now with that, since everybody is here and we are talking about you, I think it would be a good time if I could request everyone, before we dive right into the substance of this course, and you're still happy and not haggard with all the work we're giving you. No, that's a joke. To switch on your cameras if you'd like and join us for a group photo. And we'd then like to share this photo with you at some point. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen for just a moment, so I can also see what's going on behind my screen. And hopefully everyone has their cameras on. All right. And we all wait for Branka, and I would also request Leah to maybe back Branka up and take a few extra shots. You can never have too many good screenshots, and then we pick the best ones. All right, so Branka, when you give us your cue, we'll hold our smiles, but we won't do it for any more than 20 seconds. So you have to be quick. Branka,
Hello, testing, sorry.
Yes. And anyone who's still, if I could sort of persuade you to switch on your camera, I would do that till the very last minute. Of course, we won't force you, but it'll be nice to see you. So ready when you are. No pressure, Branka.
So sorry, my Zoom just dropped here.
No, we're just teasing you. Don't worry. Leah, if you don't mind taking over that while Branka is struggling with that, with the technical side, if you could also help take a few screenshots, then we could do that. Just give us a cue, and then we'll show you our most beautiful smile.
I'll start with the last pages, okay, Leah? You go in the first ones and I'll do the last ones.
How are we doing?
Almost there. It's a lot of people. All right, and one more from my side, just a second. All right, thank you so much.
Thank you so much. And there is certainly a business idea here somewhere on how to get these screenshots on Zoom. I think we all attend enough meetings. If someone figures this one out, I think you're on to something. Anyway, Thank you so much. We'll share that photo with you. It's going to be a nice memento of the group that has come together, as I was saying a moment ago. I do want to share my screen for another second, and that's for a very important task because I wanted to introduce two of my colleagues, but perhaps we do it a little differently. Branka, I'd like you to pin Sandhya and Luke onto the screen with their cameras on, so I could just introduce you to them and tell you who they are and what we're doing and what we're doing in this course. So if we could just pin Sandhya and Luke on, so we have them. I just did that, and we have Luke right here with us from UNEP, who's a little hard to find. There he is.
He is already pinned here by on my screen. Is he pinned on everyone's screen now?
Sandhya, you're muted.
You have to spotlight, Branka.
Spotlight,
So you have to
all
spotlight
right.
for everyone.
All
There you
right.
go.
Thank you
Okay.
so much. Okay, it's my absolute privilege. I had talked about the great collaboration we had with UNEP in putting this course together, and I'd already mentioned my colleague Sandhya, who did lead the conceptualization and the development of this course. But this would not have been possible without our colleagues at UNEP, who were very, very generous with their time and with their very critical inputs and insights that we got from them. And the team at UNEP, and Luke especially, has been such a part of this course because their collaboration didn't end there. UNEP has also been pushing us to keep these numbers going and actually been supporting us so we can bring this course to as many people as we can. And they've done that consistently in every single edition. So that's how deep the collaboration runs. Sandhya, I'll just quickly tell you, is a learning portfolio manager at the UN System Staff College. She leads this portfolio here with which talks about circular economy and the environment and also about economic transformation. And Luke has over 20 years of experience with the UN system and the EU. And amongst his various hats, Luke is also, as some of you who in this course know very well, he coordinates the Switch Med regional program that works with 8 Mediterranean countries on green and circular economy. So I will leave something to your curiosity and your research skills. So you have to look for their bios in our handbook, so you know a little bit more about Luke and Sandhya. But with that, I would like to hand over to Sandhya, who would like to take you through a very quick presentation on why we thought it was a great idea to launch this course when we did and why we still think it is. So Sandhya, I hand over to you.
Thanks, Samant. And hello, everyone. It's lovely to be here. It's lovely to see some familiar names and faces and some new ones. But as Samant says, we are really excited to be part of this cohort. It looks like a fantastic cohort with unprecedented numbers. And so it's wonderful to be here with you. Thank you for letting us do that. And I want to say as well, it is lovely to be here with Luke, who has really been, a partner on this course and has brought UNEP in and UNEP's expertise into this course in so many different ways. And we're really grateful for his continued support of the program. So just wanted to say thank you for being here as well, Luke. Okay. I thought I might talk a little bit about why the course and why we chose the course and how we conceptualized it in the way we did. And therefore, what we think are sort of the, what is the key value of this course. So I thought I'd take a few minutes. I do have a few slides, but don't worry, they're not going to be long. And they're mostly questions at you. So what we'll do is we go through these few slides and talk a little bit. And what I'd love for you to be able to do, if you can, please, is, when I have a question for you, if you could put your answers in the chat, so we can see the answers coming up there. Okay, let me take a minute to share screen. I'm hoping you're seeing the right screen now.
Yes,
Sandhya.
Great.
Excellent. Okay. All right. So as you see, title of the course, Circular Economy and the 2030 Agenda. And what I want to do is a little bit talk about why it's called what it's called. Why is it called Circular Economy and the 2030 Agenda? And there are two parts to this, right? There's the part on circular economy, and then there's the part on the 2030 Agenda. And what I want to do is to look at each of those in turn and see what it meant and why, why it's part of the course. So let's start with the second piece first. Let's start with the 2030 agenda. And I'm going to start by asking the question of why did we go, why did we want to link this back to sustainable development and the 2030 agenda? Now, for those of you who have already, since this Monday morning or since Friday evening, already started to look at the module, you will see some of these themes have been looked at there in more detail. And for those who haven't yet had a chance, you will get a chance to look at these and sort of ask these questions in a little more detail in the module, but I thought I'd give you my perspective on where we went with what we went. Okay, so let me start with the first simple question for you that I want you to put answers in the chat. You can use either the full definition or keywords, but my question to you is, what is sustainable development? I'm seeing some answers coming in, considering future generation needs. And recycling is sustainable development, okay? Regeneration, continuity of operation, considering present needs. I see that present needs as well, meeting present and considering the future. Unselfish, not overusing the Earth's resources. Satisfying our needs, future generations, rethinking, considering people, planet, and profit. So the triple bottom line, inclusive, resilient, natural resources wisely. Okay, excellent. Okay, so I see systemic approach. Very nice. So I see there are some who have clearly been through the module, possibly some who have been looking at it in in other places, and then there are some who have also taken this wider view of there is something larger here, bigger, systemic. And yes, many of you are right. There was a definition that the Brundtland Commission report came up with, which is development meeting the needs of the present without compromising the ability of the future generations. Now, what I want to point out is two specific things to notice here. One is the idea of development being something that meets needs rather than meeting, if you like, wants. Yeah, and that raises questions in itself. What are needs? What do we really need in order to survive? And how do we look at our development as a human race as being meeting those needs? What are those needs? Yeah, so there's that question of, which is very interestingly phrased for me. And for me, the second thing that is of interest here is this very clear focus on not just my present, not just me, not just us now, but what do future generations also need, and how I have a responsibility to make sure that I'm not using up something that will prevent the future generations from enjoying the same resources that I do. So, and this, given that this was discussed in the 1970s, I think really far-sighted, very clear in what are the kinds of questions it's raising. And sadly, although it raised these questions in the 1970s, we're still trying to find ways to answer them. So, in a sense, that's one of the things that the course actually makes the point of in the beginning as well. But another way to look at it, and we have covered some of this during the first module, is another way of asking that same question is, are we able to live in a space where everybody is able to meet their basic social needs and their social thresholds, everybody, without going too far on our planetary boundaries and without overusing the planet's limited resources? And this is the perspective that Kate Raworth has used to set up what she calls the donut. It's a wonderful book, by the way, Donut Economics. If you haven't read it, I highly recommend you do. And her point is that, are we able to meet everybody's social thresholds without exceeding our planetary boundaries? And that space, if you like, that safe and just space for humanity, that green ring, is what we visualize as sustainable development. So moving from sustainable development then, what's the link to the 2030 agenda? And I'm going to ask you another question. Are the 2030 agenda and the SDGs one and the same? Salome, the name of the book was Donut Economics, and we'll come back to that. So I'm seeing some no's and some yeses. CE is a means to reach the agenda. SDGs are needed. SDGs are a means. SDGs are part of the agenda. Right, nice. They are the agenda. Okay, so a bit of a trick question there, to be honest. The SDGs, as we know them, the 17 SDGs, are part of the agenda. But the agenda is a little more than that. It's a very comprehensive sort of plan. It's a description of what we would want to do as well. It's an aim. It's a vision document, if you like, that tries to say this is what we aim to achieve as a planet. And all of the countries that you are all from, all 115 of your countries represented here, had representatives of your national governments who signed on to this agenda, right? And the 2030 agenda was sort of attempting to establish this universal agenda, which says that everybody, everywhere in the world, no matter where, should be looking at this as an integrated agenda, that this is not just a list of SDGs. You know, you don't get to sustainable development by ticking off, okay, I've tackled gender now, so I can move on to the next and start looking at water. That you actually need to think about their interlinked and integrated nature of the SDGs, so that there is this integrated agenda. It is transformative because of this integrated nature, in the way that, you know, if you were able to achieve success along these mix of parameters, it would actually mean a better life for all on a healthy planet. And it is rights-based. It is focused on making sure nobody is left behind. It is nationally owned. Now, this is very interesting, because a lot of the time when we talk about the 2030 agenda or the SDGs, they're often referred to as the UN's SDGs. And in a sense, the United Nations was sort of the convening platform for it, but it actually is a nationally owned agenda. It's what countries signed up to. And that it's a global partnership. It needs to be addressed. And the idea of putting this together with 17 SDGs, and the 17 SDGs were almost like an action plan, if you will, yeah, of a set of targets within it, ways to measure against this. And so that was kind of the how we, if sustainable development is the goal and the 2030 agenda is the vision document, then the SDGs are sort of the action plan to get there. And in a sense, this is such an ambitious but such an inspiring goal that it seems worthwhile that, you know, that we're all signed on to. Okay, so let's ask the second question, which is, why a circular economy? And why should we look at a circular economy? So what is the link between circular economy and the 2030 agenda? I know Julius, for example, said the 2030 agenda is a vehicle to achieve the SDGs. What's the link between circular economy and the 2030 agenda? It's a way to, resources are finite, capitalize on existing resource efficiency, avoid waste. Based on studies, diversification helps save the world. CE is a means to achieve the agenda. Thank you. Complements the aims. It's a strategy to reduce material effect, way to support the agenda, reducing environmental impacts. One route. Yes. Okay, wonderful. Thank you all for responses there. And you're absolutely right. The reason that we link the two is because circular economy is, as you say, one route, but one critically important route to actually achieving the 2030 agenda. If you wanted to address a number of these issues, and they are interlinked, then one of the ways to achieve them, we believe, is through looking at a circular economy. But in looking at that, I want to actually talk about our view of circular economy being slightly different in the way that we've looked at it for this course. And I want to really talk about a few things. I think we have, in the way in which we designed the course, expanded a little bit the view of what a circular economy is. And, you know, a lot of the work on circular economy that we saw seems to fit in the space of materials management, which is how can I drive efficient use of resources? How can I capture them? How can I recycle? You know, how can I best reuse existing short resources? And sure, that is centrally the nub of CE. But in a way, we wanted to say it's more than just materials management. It is actually looking at a complete value chain. It's looking at processes, not just products. It's certainly more than efficiency. It is not just about reducing inputs. It is actually thinking about it of different ways of not just producing, but also of consuming, and recognizing that consumption is in effect the core driver to production. And I think Luke will certainly say more about this, and we were very much influenced by UNEP's circularity diagram that you will view in a few days, in the next week. It also needs to have this holistic, longer time window. As we said, with sustainable development, CE is not about efficiency of today. It's about really thinking about how can this as a process support this longer term view of sustainable development, being able to deal with intergenerational equity. So that is very integral part of the way we're looking at CE on this course. And finally, I want to just say, ultimately, it's now, as Saman said, it's been 3 years on this course, and every year we learn so much with the cohort of participants, with the speakers, and every year it refines our own thinking about this space. And some of the inputs that we heard in the previous year seem to sort of coalesce for me to really think what circular economy is about at the end of the day is it's about care. It's about caring for our relationships with not just things, but with also with other people and with the planet. And one of the speakers who comes on later on in this, in one of the webinars, she talks about the fact that our relationship to things is broken. And I would actually argue that our relationships with our planetary home, with our fellow humans, is broken too. And that crisis that we see around us, the crises of climate change, the crises of consumption, the crises of waste, these are symptomatic of this broken relationship. And actually, circular economy is about addressing that. It is addressing that broken relationship. And this broken relationship wasn't always broken. I mean, we have seen earlier generations, there are other communities that have more balanced and more healthy relationships with their planetary home, with people, with things. And so there is value in recognizing that circular economy is about, efficiency and material use and so on, but it's also at a more sort of intrinsic level. It's about this relationship that we have with people and the planet, with things, with how we want to view our lives, and how that actually needs that balance. And that, in fact, we can, as much as we can learn from, new digital technologies that allow us to manage materials in exciting and, amazing ways, as much as we can learn from new R&D, we can also learn from more indigenous knowledge, which really did try and incorporate some of these basic principles of the circular economy. And this has been my reflection over the last few years, that as we do more to recognize how much of circular, how much technology and, new technology and new research is driving and expanding the possibilities of circular economy, we also need to remember that a lot of that core knowledge, which lies within indigenous knowledge, within oral cultures, shouldn't be lost, because actually, I think there's a lot we can learn from there. So I want to come to one final question, which is, how to achieve this transformation. And what we do know is we need action from across the board. So we're going to need private sector, government, civil society, academia, and individuals. We need strong institutions. We may need to relook at planning and policy making. We may need to rethink the way our global systems and ways of behavior work. And we really need to go back and look at our systems of consumption and production in a sort of very intrinsic way to understand how to address these issues. And that's where you fit in. This group of 400 people has been handpicked from hundreds more. And you have been picked because we believe that you could be a change maker in this space, and that you possibly already are one. And that is why we would like to be on this learning journey with you. And we would like to see how we can then move this from working and learning on this course to action and where we will take it. So we'll come back to the question of action in the final week. We will come back to you with that question of where do we take this in terms of behavior. But I just wanted to just leave some thoughts on the course already with you. And I'm really looking forward to continuing this conversation over the next few weeks. All right, Luke, on that note, can I hand over to you?
Yes, you can, Sandhya. And I have now the great pleasure to make a presentation that is entitled What to Say After the Presentation that Sandhya made, where she touched up on nearly everything and raised already all the most important questions that will be discussed over the next 6 weeks. So that's the little challenge for me. In the name of the United Nations Environment Programme, I would of course also like to welcome all of you and thank you all for having taken the time. 208, oh, earlier there were 211. So when Sandhya handed over to me, 3 people ran away. That's not nice for me. So
or I drove them away, Luke.
Okay, yeah. So we have 200 people in this call, 400 in the whole training. As was mentioned by my colleagues, it's the 5th edition. We are getting close to the 2,000 people who will go through this training. It won't happen in this session, so that means we need to have a 6th session coming up. It was mentioned by my great colleagues from the Staff College, and I will not play the ping pong saying thank you back and forth, but it's really, you will really enjoy the training, not only because we hope of the content, but also the way Samant, Leah, Branka and everybody will be supporting you. I mean, it's really a pleasure, the training, and even I took it twice only to be part of this game because it creates a community. And I saw in the chat, somebody asked, is circular economy a philosophy? Well, that everybody can decide. I would not say it's a philosophy, but if it's a philosophy, this training would become like it will be a very, I think, intense course, and it's very impressive to see the connections that were made from people in this course from the first session. And the best example is that one of the participants who were on your side enjoyed the training so much that she organized a specific session for a group of people from her country. So 300 people got this training because one person took the initiative. And that's also what will be my main point over the next 6 weeks, is to see what everybody can do. Now, the circular economy is not only about recycling. It's not only about using cotton bags or using the famous drinking bottles so that we don't use plastic bottles, but it's mostly what we do with them. Do we actually use them? There was a quite interesting article recently about how often you need to use the cotton bag before it has the impact of a plastic bag. So and maybe it's something I should not say, but it's the reality. There are no real or final solution. A lot is the way we behave, the way we consume and produce. And circular economy in the SDG reports to the Sustainable Consumption and Production goal, which is number 12. And we used to call that, it's the people's goal, because we're all consumers and producers. I saw over 100 countries represented in this training. Some say good morning, some say good evening, some are probably soon going to sleep, others just woke up. But it depends on us. How do we consume? How do we take our breakfast or our dinner? How do we go to work? What is our philosophy towards life? I would say circular economy, or mostly sustainable consumption and production, is a part of that. What do we want? And you will see in the next 6 weeks, you will have experts presenting very specific topics, but I would invite you all to keep the overall view. And when you look at the list of participants in this training, and that's what for us is the most interesting one, we go from high-level government officials to private sector, lots of students or interns who want to get more knowledge about this. But we also have people that you would not necessarily expect here. We have artists, we have photographers, we have people who are looking about changing their priorities in life. We have people that are marked as circular economy experts. So please, to all of you, continue sharing your information in the chat, share experiences, share links, reach out to us on LinkedIn. And for that, please, when you send a request to link to us on LinkedIn, drop a little line saying that you're in the training, because I know some of us do not accept randomly people, because we want to keep it a group of people that you know, so that you can exchange. So this is a little bit what we are going to discuss all together over the coming weeks. Is circular economy something only for private sector? Yes and no. Is circular economy something that will in itself save the world? Definitely not. But it's one tool. I saw in the comment, somebody was talking about life cycle assessment. All these topics will be presented, and you will see that everything is very much interlinked. But again, there's also something that you need to keep in mind, that circular economy is to see what we are doing with a product. When a product was produced, it had a specific role. What happens afterwards with it? And I would like us to also make a step back or forward to say, before we buy something, before we have a product, do we actually need it? The best way to avoid, for example, plastic bottles, it's not necessarily a question about recycling, reusing, what are we going to do? But the thing is, before, did we actually need this product? There's a lot going on fashion. Sustainable fashion is very much one of the flavors of the month. But sustainable fashion, should we not think before? Do we need all this, all the clothes, everything we buy? So maybe the best way to touch up on circular economy is to avoid, and we are not calling for what are these terms used, that to consume less, or we just say consume differently. And over the next 6 months, there are a few examples that will come up. One that I quite like is this sharing biking system that exists here in Paris, where I'm located. You have these bikes that you buy a monthly pass, and then you have different biking stations, and you can take a bike there. So if you promote this system saying it's good for the environment, sure, you will have some people who take it, who pay for it and use it. But if you present it saying that if you buy this bike pass, it costs you about $10 a month. If you buy a metro and bus ticket, a monthly one in Paris, it's roughly probably up to $85, $90 a month now. If you would have a car, it would cost you in Paris with taxes, fuel, parkings, roughly $400 a month. Of course, the shared bike is different than an own bike, it's different than a bus, but it allows people like me to go to work. And so if you present it that way, with this financial aspect, you can also present it with the health impact it can have. People might listen to it. And so whatever we are talking about, and it's really a pleasure to see that there's so many people all from entrepreneurs or private sector here. Money rules the world. If we like it or not, money is the boss. But we can show how to use things in a different way and in a more appropriate way. I was very lucky before joining UNEP here in Paris. I worked for nearly 10 years in Africa. Well, in Africa, there are things, and in other places in the world, that exist that Europe or North America, now we discover it as green entrepreneurship, repairing a TV. While in Senegal, where I lived, TVs, electronic stuff was repaired. It was not thrown away and replaced immediately. So what's also very important for us is there's no final definition and there's no good and wrong. And a question that will come up all the time will be, is this not something that the northern countries, the rich countries, and when we say rich, it's of course only speaking economically, because culturally or socially, some of the wealthiest countries are not necessarily the richest. Is it something that you decided to impose on us that we do not consume, that we do not develop? No, not at all. And I will conclude because I want to also let you discuss a little bit more, and I'm actually curious what I see on my second screen, all the questions coming up, is if you take the example of a cellular phone. The phone, this phone allowed people to connect. And you had lots of places, villages, even still in France, where you do not have landlines. So the phone is not necessarily something that is a higher step in development, but it allowed also people and villages or cities to leapfrog. And that's what we try also with circular economy, to show that you do not necessarily need to make the same mistakes as others did, but it can allow you to jump from one position to another one with winning experiences. And as Samant mentioned, I'm coordinating with colleagues a project called SwitchMed, which is about working with 8 Mediterranean countries to switch towards circular economy and sustainable consumption and production. And so you allow me to send the special greetings to all the participants from Algeria, Morocco, Tunisia, Egypt, Jordan, Israel, Palestine, and Lebanon. I know some of you, we had the chance, well, for me at least, was a chance to work together. Okay, somebody did not consider it as a pleasure, but okay.
I will request the participant to, okay, well, I think I found you. It's Abel. I'm going to mute Abel.
I'm sorry, I'm clicking mute here, but it's not muting.
Okay, so I will mute myself and thank everybody for being here. And Sandhya, we are back to 212 people. So I brought one extra in.
So look, I think that settles it. Who's bringing in the people and who's pushing them away? Sandhya, I should say I share a wall with Sandhya, so I should not be making such risky statements. But no, I just want to acknowledge. Thanks, Sandhya. I saw that you've been going through the chat and answering all these questions. And one, I thought I'd give you like a minute or two to maybe elaborate on some of those answers, which really went to the heart of it. But I think there's a lot more to be said. Before I do that, I wanted to just make an observation based on both our speakers right now. There is a growing recognition that we also felt as the team designing this course, that we were talking a lot about the policy environment and the big things industry can do to move towards circularity. And in doing that, we realized that what a vital role the individual plays as well. Often this is set up as a false dichotomy that, my actions as an individual do not matter. It's bigger actions which impact policy or industry, which are the ones that will really make this help us make the switch. But we like to argue in this course that's not necessarily so. These two elements, if we separate them out as individual and systemic, are actually complementary. And we even make the argument that it's a very logical and basic one, that the individual is the unit which forms society eventually. And I say that because I noticed some questions which were talking about, rather on the philosophical side, about can my one action make a difference or not? And before I hand back to Sandhya, I just wanted to highlight two questions which I saw she was already answering, which related to the fact that we already have a structure and an economic system which is built on competition and consumption and GDP growth. There were in fact a few questions like that. How can CE be applied to that? And I'm purposely using the way it was framed in the question, so Sandhya can sort of elaborate on that. And of course, while doing that, just if you could elaborate a bit on what looks like this apparent contradiction and what are the opportunities that then that contradiction offers us. So Sandhya, if you could take it from there.
Wow, that's a tough question, Samant. I've been actually trying to put down an answer even as you were speaking, but I didn't finish typing it. So I'm glad for this opportunity, because I think there are a lot of people who have asked similar questions. How is it linked in an economy based on competition, in an economy in the capitalist model and so on. So I wish I had a perfect 100% answer. I don't. I'm happy to learn more and continue to have this discussion with all of you. Here's where my head's at the moment, which is that, firstly, I think there are certainly parts of the system that can be addressed, even if not the whole. And I think it's certainly worth saying we still need to go ahead and start making some of those changes, and the need is urgent. So we will have to address it, even if the ideal situation or the perfect situation in your mind, which addresses sort of the underlying understanding of the economic model, has to change. But yes, there is a question. It does ultimately, as you keep pushing this question further and further, as you keep asking, how can I make CE a little more holistic? How can I look at more of the stream? How can I start to engage more parts of the value chain? You do come down to this question of then how do you define value? And what does value mean? And when you ask that question, you do ask the question which starts to question the point of your current economic system. I'm not saying everything is going to change and it's going to change overnight. And I think that even without changing the current economic system or questioning it, you could still be making a lot of really important changes. But will this be a question that comes in? Yeah, I think it does. So that's my 2 bits, but I'm going to ask you back, Samant and Luke, if there's anything you would say differently.
Luke, I'll give you that opportunity.
Well, there was one thing in the question where somebody said, at least. The person mentioned about, if I'm not having my cellular phone, why is somebody calling me now?
So the question was, Luke, I sometimes forget to bring my reusable shopping bag, but at least I still use it when I remember. So this was from Marianne, who had asked this question. And this doesn't make any sense to Marianne, but yes, I think that's the one you were looking for.
Exactly. And that's the one which I think is also linked to what Sandhya said. It's about, we all can play a role. And of course, it's coming up to this questions all the time. Me, myself, I cannot change everything. So what's the point if I do something, if my community does something, if I teach my children to behave in a way, if my country says something, there are other countries who don't, if they don't follow. I think we all have a role to play. And there are 2 examples. One is I'm representing, and we're 2 or 3 others in the in this training a very small country. And it's even when I mean, Samantha and Sandhya, I'm not even sure that my country would be considered a city in your country. So it's extremely small, but we are one of the UN member countries. And when my country decides to, for example, to have all public transport, to have it for free, it makes the news. It makes the news internationally. It makes the news also in newspapers in the US, in India, in all over the world. And it can influence. We all can have a little bit of influence. The second, and I actually just came up with the third one. The second one is how many of you in this call have been smoking and stopped smoking? Quite a lot of people stop smoking because their children, their little brothers, little sisters came one day and said, well, the teacher in school told us that this makes smoking kills you and I don't want you to die. And people stop smoking. So again, a little 3, 4, 5, no, 3 is a little bit too young, but 5, 6-year-old child can make you stop smoking. And the other one is we all have people that we admire or look up for some reason. This is an artist, this is a sports person. And it's one person. It's one person that can make a change. If you have, I mean, here in Paris, everything is about soccer these days. We have soccer players here in Paris. They have probably thousands more times more people on their social media than UNEB and the Staff College together. If they speak up about something and not using them only to greenwashing, it can have impact. And I know in this training, there are people who have connections. This one, this third degree connection that we all have. So we all can have an impact in one way or another, but we also can say, why should I do it? If Samantha and Sandhya stop taking plastic bags, I can still continue doing it because there are 2 out of the 3 who do it. So it's a little bit, and that's what Sandhya mentioned also about to care. It's a little bit about, I would say, it's the power we have to make change. And of course, I mean, we are far from being perfect and good examples. And I always have one cotton bag here, but actually I have a few here. And it brings you exactly to the stupid point. Why do I always take one? Well, if the Staff College for the next training does a cotton bag with 5th edition or 2,000 people went through the circular economy training, will I take it? Of course. Will I put it next to the others? Unfortunately, yes. So it's also a little bit about what we can do. And the same is for governments, for businesses, and for everybody.
Thanks, Sandhya, and thanks, Luke. And I think it's great that we're already sort of diving into these deeper questions. What will also happen during the course as we go along is that we're going to come back to what might seem like more staid and sort of policy prescriptions, where we actually explore which are the areas where interventions would be most effective. So we will sort of broaden this beyond the individual, but never actually losing sight of the fact that we do hold immense power. And I just want to acknowledge a few things from the chat. Firstly, I want to say thank you to Dorota, who shared this wonderful resource from the Ellen MacArthur Foundation on upstream innovation for packaging solutions. I saw a lot of discussions there. And I take this moment to point out that please do post these things on the platform in the shared resources section. So even those who didn't come for the webinar could benefit from that. The second thing I wanted to mention was that there are a lot of questions in this chat, and we try to cover most of them, mostly by clubbing them. But also feel free to post these questions post the webinar, after the webinar, in the chat. We might, we will pick them up and we try and answer them in the next one. Or you might have a colleague who's even better placed than us to answer one of these questions. So that keeps the conversation going. We will share the chat with you, so you could go through it and take a look. And if something is still a burning question which wasn't quite addressed, then that's what those forums are for. And the third and final thing, which I wanted to just give a shout out to Jürgen, because this totally made me smile when he referenced the 1986 Michael Jackson song, Man in the Mirror. And I don't think there could be a pithier way of driving this point that we've been trying to make about the power of the individual. So thanks, Jürgen. Keep the 80s song references coming. That really does add a lot to the webinar. With that, in our final 25 minutes, I know that there's a host of questions that we couldn't get to, but I feel that we've covered the major themes. What we want to do is give you all an opportunity to meet each other and to get to know each other. And what better way of doing that than by continuing this conversation that we are having? So what we will do now is we will break out into smaller rooms, so around 7 or 8 people in each room. And we can pick up on this conversation, which was talking about the role of the individual, but let's make it a little broader, and let's go back to talking about what are the most important factors, you, in your opinion, that you think are moving us towards a more circular economy. So I'm going to put that question on the screen, so you can reflect on it for a second, and we just add it to your chat room as well, so you sort of have it there as an anchor to structure your discussion. What we suggest is take a few minutes to introduce yourselves to each other, and then we'll post that question, and then you can really talk about what do you think are the most important factors in moving towards a circular economy. And this can be broad in terms of the politics of it, the economics of it. Luke has a question at this point.
No, it's just before we go into groups. I read something that Victoria said, and I think it's interesting and important also to discuss in the group. She's talking about that being tired of consumer blaming, and what we actually want to present, it's not at all the consumer blaming. We want actually to show how much power we have, and that depends, of course, also the cultures and the countries we are in. But the consumers, we have power. We do. I personally believe that it's the consumer who decides what will be in supermarkets, what will be produced, and what are the products that will survive. It will take some time, so it's not at all about blaming consumers, but more showing that we, the people, have the power and can make changes.
Luke, couldn't agree with you more, and thank you so much for picking up on that on the chat. I think that was a very relevant point to make, and that's absolutely true. We do focus on seeing how we can be better and more empowered and informed consumers, rather than placing the burden on an individual, which, you're right, can be quite overwhelming when there are enormous incentives and systems in place to have our linear system of production to perpetuate. So very good point. Thanks for bringing that up, Victoria. We will elaborate on that. So with that, I would request Branka now. Branka, if you could start putting us in groups of 7 in different chat rooms and breakout rooms.
Yes.
And then we can start our sessions. And just so everyone knows, we have roughly 20 minutes to go. We will still be here in the main chat room. If there's anyone with a question or wants to discuss something or wants to come back. But at the stroke of 4:30 here in Bonn, you're very welcome to leave the webinar. You need not come back to the main room, because one of the things we do want to enforce discipline on ourselves from the first webinar is that we respect the time that we've said we will take for these webinars, because we know that an hour and a half is already a long time to spare. So the way we like to think of it is that our webinars go on to up to an hour and a half. So we make sure we can pack in as much, but not beyond. So once you are done with the conversation in the breakout room, you may leave the webinar. But if you would like to come back to the main chat room where we are and talk to us or ask us questions, we'd be more than delighted. So Branka, if you could now help us break out into rooms of 7, that would be wonderful.
All right, starting the rooms in 3, 2, 1.
And apologies if we have interrupted some very interesting discussions. We did want to keep some kind of structure at the end, and I think I'll just wait for the rooms to close entirely so everyone is here, so we can not just close this webinar, but also tell you a bit about what to expect next week, and rather before that in this week. And then we shall close at 4:30 local time. Are there still people who are trying to find their way back, Branka? Are there still
3
people in the
seconds.
rooms?
So the breakout rooms are all closed now, so
I
everybody
see.
should be back
Okay,
now.
so I see that now everyone comes in all at once. So I think
are back.
everyone is here now. Yes.
We have also at the regional level, if you go to for ECOWAS.
Sorry, what's that? I couldn't catch that. Someone had a comment. I couldn't quite
I
get
think he was continuing a conversation that we had
that.
had
Oh,
in
I'm
the.
so sorry, and
Yes.
I did actually
Yeah, so-
apologize for that,
sorry,
because
sorry,
I
sorry.
think we have interrupted some very fascinating discussions, and I do apologize for that. But that's just to tell you that you have a very interesting cohort of colleagues, and hopefully you continue these conversations in the chat. I just want to say on behalf of the UN Staff College and our team here that's putting together this course and running it, thank you so much for showing up in numbers and the interesting questions, and for the chats and the interaction that we've already seen on the platform. We really hope that this is a sign of things to come in the next 6 weeks. Let me just give you a little preview of what happens next week. Next week, we get a little technical. In next week's webinar, we'll have speakers from the Ellen MacArthur Foundation and from UNEP who come in and talk about the circularity diagram and the butterfly diagram, which is what we're going to focus on in the next week's content. So for any questions or any technical issues that you're having, please do reach out to your facilitators, and we'd be more than happy. And once again, as a final thing, thank you so much to everyone who's been sharing resources. We are very grateful, and I hope you keep doing that. And I wish you a good rest of the day, wherever you are, or a nice evening. And we hope to see you next week. Thank you so much. Bye.